Hi guys, Eva here, and today I am here to talk about the books that I read this summer. With this summer I mean July and August. Now I'm not gonna do any statistics for these videos just because I don't want these to take too long. Plus I kind of am lazy. I just came back home and I want to do it as soon as possible. Start with the books. So this video is about the books that I've read, and then the next video will come up probably next week, will be about the graphic novels and one manga that I read during these 2 months. From September I will go back to my normal wrap-ups and so on. Just to keep this short and sweet, which it won't be anyway, I decided not to do any statistics and so on. But I've read quite a few books and graphic novels, so I'm quite happy with myself. And without further ado, let's get started. The first book that I actually finished, I was already in Italy and it was on my Kindle, and it was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now, this is a YA fantasy. Basically, the protagonist was brought to Fairyland when she was little by the father of her stepsister, and she grows up in the fairyland. There are court intrigues and so on. Now, I will say just that. You will, if you're interested in knowing what happened, why she was brought there, and what happens on, you will have to read this book because I'm not gonna spoil it. I gave this book 3.75 stars. Now, on one hand, I think it moves pretty fast. It's full of plot twists, which are kind of interesting. So, you know, for a YA where the piece was good, I mean, it was almost too good. There was also the problem, meaning that although I liked the plot twist and it kept on the edge of your seat, on the other hand, it was so quick, things happened so quick that it was only plot based and characters were not really described or laid out enough for you to care about, for me to care about them. So I did enjoy this one, but I didn't love it. I am not like pulling out my hair for the sequel, which is already out, by the way. It was a quick, enjoyable read, but I guess I didn't love it as many others did. Then for the second book, we have my unpopular opinions. I read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Wong. And you follow basically this woman. She's 30 years old, if I'm not mistaken. She has Asperger's syndrome, which is high-functioning autism form, and basically she's really not good at relationship with men, and so she hires this escort to teach her how to be in a relationship and how to entice men and so on. Now, okay, I gave this book 2 stars. People love it. On BookTube I've heard so many great things. It does include like diverse cast, meaning that the guy, he's half Vietnamese and half Swedish, if I'm not mistaken. And honestly, like, his description, he sounds awesome. So it was really like, yes please, I'm here for it. However, although the writing was okay, I didn't think that the portrayal of the protagonist with Asperger's syndrome was too realistic. I think it's also on voices. I will highlight in my Goodreads review, which is coming up soon. I will link it down here when it's ready. The most cringe-worthy part and parts where I really didn't think that someone with Asperger would actually behave like that. I do know really well someone with Asperger. It's kind of part of my family, and so since I was little I've known him and I know how to behave and so on, and also he's not the only one in my family, so I really like, so I'm not talking like out of the blue or just because I studied psychology. So, you know, it's not based on my studies or anything. It's, my opinion is based on what I actually saw in my life. In general, I could be okay, I guess. Like, not all the parts were bad or not well portrayed, but I think like there was a scene, for example, one of the first scenes, and I'm sorry if this is considered a spoiler, but I don't think it is. And it's not really about the plot or anything. But I crossed my finger anyway, so beware when I cross them, the spoiler will be over. But in the first scene, in one of the first scenes, basically they meet and they never met before. They go in a hotel room, and I don't remember even if they kiss or something, but in the end she's half naked and she falls asleep with him he's watching TV and she just falls asleep and wake up the next morning, and she has a lot of anxiety before that and so on. And I don't think someone in her position would actually fall asleep in that situation, half naked with a total stranger the first night, and just woke up in the morning as fresh as a rose and say, oh, hello, good morning, or whatever. I didn't think that was realistic at all. Also, I thought it was really tropey. Like, there were a lot of tropes that you can find in many new adult books. I think that because this book was about someone suffering from Asperger and with diverse characters, which we need more, and own voices, I was automatically considered good. And I don't think many people analyze it like critically, because come on, there were so many problems about this book. Anyway, my Goodreads review will be more in details and in depth, and yeah, 2 stars. Sorry, didn't like this one. Then I've read To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra something. I haven't written down the name, shame on me, but this is a retelling of The Little Mermaid. Protagonist Lyra. Lyra is tasked by her mother to kill the prince, one of the princes of his kingdom, one of the most famous one, and in order to do so she has to become human and go undercover on his ship and become part of his crew and so on. Now, I don't want to say anything else. I did enjoy this. I gave this 4 stars. Enjoyed enough. It was a standalone. I don't know if I would have appreciated the sequel so much. It started great. It was really interesting. Went a little bit downhill in the middle part, a little bit slower, but overall I really enjoyed it. I liked the banter between the protagonists, and definitely if you want a romance that starts with enemies turning to lovers, that's for you. Nice YA fantasy. Nothing too special, but I had a good time while reading it, and that's what I wanted from it. So yeah, 4 stars. Then I've read an Italian book, which I will just really mention really quickly, but this is La Sposa Giovane by Alessandro Baricco. I gave this book 3.5 stars. The writing was really great. He chooses not to name any of his characters, so each character is the father, the young bride, the mother, and so on. So no one has a name in this book, and I really like the ending. I don't think it's translated. If it is, I'll put a picture here. If you don't see anything appeared, it means that it's not translated, but Alessandro Baricco has many of his works translated. I don't know how well, since I was lucky enough to be able to read in Italian, but his writing is amazing, and so if you have a chance to pick up something by him, definitely you can give it a try. It's a literary fiction. Not my cup of tea in general, but the writing was so good that I ended up enjoying it enough to give it 3.5 stars. Then I read Talking with Serial Killers by Christopher Berry D, and this again was a book on my Kindle. This is a non-fiction about a series of interviews the author did with serial killers throughout the years, I think around the 90s. Now, what I thought is that we were gonna get the transcript of the interviews, which was what I was interested in. We don't. I gave this book 3 stars, and it was a bit generous, I think. I gave this book 3 stars because it works as a crime anthology. So basically what he does is that each killer he has interviewed, he recounts their history, like their childhood and the crimes they committed, but then he doesn't talk about the actual interview, apart from maybe a few sentences. So it's not about the interviews and what the killer said about themselves. It's about just an anthology. You can find many books like speaking about the childhood and the crimes of that killer and that other one. So that was not what I was looking for. I was looking to read like an interview and to read the actual words of the serial killers, and I didn't get that. So yeah, quite disappointing. If you're interested in a really good true crime anthology, I would not go with it because many things were messy, and like the timeline of what he said didn't match. Like, it was all messy, not well done. I've read plenty enough to know that this was not really good. So I gave it 3 stars because it was really generous, I guess. Is Future Eva Year. I just forgot to mention one book that I actually read. I stumbled upon this book while perusing through my grandmother's collection when I was in Italy, and this book is The Love Killers by Jackie Collins. Jackie Collins was really famous in the 80s, 90s, I guess, and she wrote chick flick, I think. A bit of thriller elements in it, and that's exactly what this book is about. Specifically, it's about these girls that set out to avenge the murder of one of their friends / sister. and they decide to do so by seducing the sons of the man who commissioned the murder, and he's kind of a mafia boss or something. And so the sons, in a way or the other, are all involved in his business, and they decide to have their revenge by making those guys fall in love with them and ruining their lives. Now, I love the premise. And I did overall enjoy this book quite enough. I gave 3 stars, 3.5 stars, I think. The point is that, loving the premise so much, I wanted more from it. Basically, I think the execution was not enough. I think this book could have been so awesome, because the ending, the way things wrapped up, I really enjoyed. And I thought, I just wished it was more in depth. We had more story, more interactions between these characters. So the ending would have been more shocking and more brutal and impacting, if you want. So since it was kind of a short book, it was kind of rushed, but I would have loved to see this play out slowly, and it would have made for an awesome finale. Anyway, I enjoyed it enough, and yeah, maybe I will check out more of her books when I find them in my grandmother's collection. And now back to previous Eva. Then I've read Basic Instinct by Richard Osborne, and maybe you're familiar with the movie Basic Instinct. So this is the book, I think it was written after the movie came out, if I'm not mistaken. So it was based on the movie, actually. The premise is that this guy, a rich Hollywood guy, gets killed, and they think that his lover, this woman, this beautiful woman, did it. And she's a writer, and she wrote this book many years previously, describing exactly an homicide that happened as the one of this rich guy happened, but she wrote it like many years before. So the detectives, you follow one detective, and he thinks she's the culprit, but at the same time is really fascinated by her. And now if you've seen the movie, you know how it ends. I don't want to say anything else, but I really enjoyed this book. It was short. I had watched the movie many years ago, but I didn't remember basically anything apart from a few scenes, which are really famous scenes. But apart from that, I didn't remember the story and the plot and the ending, so it was all a surprise, and I really enjoyed it. The ending and the plot twists were kind of good. Nothing too amazing, but still really entertaining. Then I read Musica per organi caldi, which is the Italian title of this book here by Charles Bukowski. This is a collection of short stories. This is not one of my favorite Bukowski's books. I didn't appreciate a few stories that were like kind of about pedophiles or like rapists, and they felt kind of like a bad joke, the one that you don't actually laugh because it's really kind of bad. That the feeling that they left me, like, I didn't appreciate those stories. Overall, I gave this book 3 stars though, because, I mean, I love his writing and I love how he portrays humanity in such a non-sugar-coated way, and it's always fascinating the introspection he gets into humanity and his characters, how awful they are and yet how realistic they feel. It felt almost like kind of autobiographic a little bit. I don't know, I mean, I guess every time a writer writes something there is a bit of himself or herself in it, so it really felt that way. I could feel like he was putting himself out there and saying, inside of me I am actually like this, and I'm not ashamed of that, or I want to see what kind of reaction people will get. So with Bukowski, I appreciate him, and at the same time I cannot say that I overall loved this collection of stories. They were weird and some of them not in good taste, but yeah. Now, second to last book, which I have actually a physical copy of, and I stole it from my grandmother without any shame. This is The Angel of Darkness by Caleb Carr, and he's the author of Alienist, and there is like a Netflix TV show, and that's how I got to know this book. Basically, I watched the TV show and I loved it on Netflix. I don't know if there's gonna be another season following this book. And then I was at my grandmother's house this summer and I found this and was, oh my god, this is the sequel, and I was meant to read the first book even if I watched the series, but anyway I decided to just read the second one, which followed the characters from the first book and the series. And this is a chunk of a book with 700 pages. and I loved it. We follow Dr. Laszlo Kessler, who is an alienist, which is a kind of psychologist, but we are talking about the 19th centuries, and this takes place in New York, and you follow Dr. Laszlo and his companions, which are detectives and journalists, and a woman that works for the police, and then go about unraveling the mysteries behind a series of murders involving young teenagers dressed as women that work as in whorehouses in New York. So in the first book, basically the murderer is killing off these boys that dress as girls and work in the streets. Second one, you actually are hunting for someone who kidnaps and kills babies. I really appreciated this book. I mean, this is like my cup of tea. We're talking about a psychologist who works in a forensic field. This story has such a layered and complex villain. There was a fascinating series of events. I mean, it's not like, oh no, my god, I cannot put this book down and I have to read it now. It's not that kind of book, but it's that book that stays with you and has like a really impact on you, I think, and it delves deep into human subconscious and conscious. And as I said, the villain was not just a villain because they needed a bad guy. There were motives behind the behaviors, and even in the craziness there was a pattern, and it was just so interesting. It felt so special to me because it struck something inside of me. And also appreciate how women were treated by the protagonist and the message that it was behind. Of course, we're talking about more than 200 years ago, so women were not recognized as they are today, and the messages inside and the strength of these woman that works for the police, she's amazing, and she has a really important role. So I think the author did a wonderful job about everything, about the villain and about the characters, about women empowerment. And I had to steal it because this definitely deserves a place in my collection. I will buy the first book so I can have both. The last book for this wrap up is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series, I think. Now, I started this book in July, couldn't finish it before I left for Italy, so I finished the last 20 pages when I came back after 2 months. Now, you follow Locke Lamora. He's a thief in this kind of fantasy setting that reminds me a lot of Venice, which I love, my dear Venice, and the setting is beautiful. And this is another chunk of a book. I gave this book 3.75 stars. The hype definitely ruined it for me. Like, this was one of the fantasy that everybody recommended. Didn't live up to the hype. I didn't love it. On one hand, I think it was really well written. The description were amazing. The characters were good, well layered, well portrayed, and all that kind of jazz. So I really appreciate that, and I did appreciate a little bit of banter and a little bit of like funny parts in it. On the other hand, I thought this was too long, in some places boring. So 3.75 stars. I will maybe continue this series. I mean, I will continue with the series, just I will take my time. It just, yeah, it doesn't read quickly, and it was a little bit boring, meaning that I'm not like, oh my god, I need to read the sequel right now, but I want to read it because I think he's a great author. So what he did and how he developed the plot and so on, so it all made sense in a good way. But yeah, kind of not worth the hype. Thank you for watching. Next video will be about graphic novels and the manga that I read, the wrap up. I hope you'll have a good day or night depending on where you are, and if you're new, we'd love for you to subscribe, so hit the button down below. I'll see you next time. Ciao!